What's going on, people, and welcome to the Super Bowl show here on Riley Sports Talk. We are here. Today is the day. It's a holiday pretty much here in America, the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 55. We finally crowned a champion to this crazy NFL season we had. Worldwide COVID-19 pandemic, no fans, things of that nature. So it was definitely a crazy season, but it was, as always, a good season. We saw a lot of things this year. And again, I've always said, football, COVID or no COVID, the NFL, it is still king of sports. So let's go ahead and get right into the show real quickly. So I just said, we made it. 17-week NFL season as usual with the COVID-19 protocols. I mean, we had no or very limited fans all season. I think the only teams that had fans maybe was Kansas City, Dallas, and a few of the Florida teams. You know what I mean? But it was a crazy season. But one good thing that came about this season was the playoff expansion. And I really believe that is here to stay. I don't think that was a one-time deal. That is going to be here to stay. It didn't really add any extra weeks to the season or anything. That first round bye, as we can see, is more important than it ever has been. But the two teams we have in the playoffs, as we can see, Tampa Bay, they didn't even get a bye. So although that bye is important, it's not a life or death sentence. And one of the craziest things we had this season was this here. The Broncos played an NFL game without an actual QB. I mean, it was a fun game to watch. It reminded me watching a Pop Warner game where they were pretty much, when they did throw the ball, it was only like little short dink and dunk passes to the running back. But it was pretty hilarious. But again, we made it. And as always, as usual, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and share the video if you enjoy my content. So let's go ahead and get right into the slides. The teams. The Kansas City Chiefs, winners of the AFC West and the number one seed in the entire AFC playoffs. The Bucs, they were second in the NFC South behind the New Orleans Saints. In the playoffs, I just kind of alluded to this, all their wins came on the road. So ironically, playing in the Super Bowl is going to be their first time playing in their home stadium in the entire playoffs. Again, this has never happened before either. No team has ever played in the Super Bowl in their own stadium. So congratulations to Tampa Bay for that one. What's at stake? As I kind of alluded earlier, the biggest prize in North American sports, and that's to be crowned Super Bowl champions. But the Chiefs, they're trying for back-to-back champions since the Patriots, I think that was in 2003, 2004 time frame. On top of that, they're trying to pretty much establish a new dynasty, pretty much replacing the Patriots. Also, what's at stake? In my opinion, this is my opinion only, Tom Brady is trying to shake the GOAT narrative. And what I mean by that is, at least from my opinion, a lot of people believe that the success in New England comes from Bill Belichick more than Tom Brady. So Brady is trying to shake that pretty much, as we can see what happened this year. The Patriots didn't even make the playoffs, and as you can see, Brady's in the Super Bowl. So if he wins that this year, I think that argument pretty much goes away, and Tom Brady will be pretty much crowned the GOAT, no matter how much you love him, hate him, what have you. I'll admit that I am not the biggest Tom Brady fan from a pure football standpoint. I have nothing against the man off the field, but from a football standpoint, I am not his biggest fan. So let's get into the next slide. Kind of alluded this changing of the guard. Tom Brady, the old crafty veteran versus the up-and-coming young pup in Patrick Mahomes. What is Patrick Mahomes? 25, 26. He already has an MVP. He already has a Super Bowl ring, and this is his second Super Bowl. So this is pretty much Tom Brady all over again if he can keep it up. So next slide. Let's break down the teams slightly here. Now, I normally break down the teams a lot further than this, but I mean, it's the Super Bowl. At this part of the season, we already know who we're dealing with teams, offense, defense, and stuff like that. So, but I broke it down just a little bit. The Chiefs, they defeated Cleveland in the divisional round, and then they defeated the Bills in the conference championship. They have the number one offense in the entire NFL and the 16th total defense. Now, remember this. This is going to be a key to this game. The Bucs, all on the road again, they defeated Washington, New Orleans, and Green Bay. They're 7th in total offense and 6th ranked defense totally. So they're pretty good, top notch on both offense and defense compared to the Chiefs, who, although number one offense in the NFL, they're 16th in total defense. So let's get to the next slide. This is a rematch. This is a rematch that was played in week 12. As you can see, Kansas City came out on top 27-24. Do me a favor, remember this for later in the video. The second half of this game, as you can see, Tampa Bay outscored them 17-7. Tyreek Hill had a monster game. If anybody recall watching that game, he had about 200 yards in the first half. I think he was like at 150 or something at the end of the first quarter. So as you can see, he had 13 receptions, 269 yards, and 3 TDs. Now, if there's a monster of a game he had, keep in mind, Kansas City only scored 27 points that game. They got 18 from Hill alone, plus the 3 extra points, and just 2 field goals from there on out. So, from that game, I learned something, and it started that game, a disturbing trend for the Chiefs. We will get into that later in a few moments here, but there's a very disturbing trend, which is kind of why I told you to watch the second half of that particular game. So, as good as both teams' QBs are, the wide receivers are what, in my opinion, what makes these quarterbacks so good. Let's start with the Chiefs. These boys they're explosive. We know this. Kelsey, who's not a wide receiver technically, I mean, he's a wide receiver body, but he's a tight end. Kelsey and Hill are 2 of the best in the league in yards after catch. I think Kelsey is like number 3 with about 550 yards after the catch, whereas Hill is like number 18, 19, but he still has like 450 yards receiving after the catch. That is a lot of yards. Demarcus Robinson. People forget about him, but this man has about he has about 48 catches on the season, and he averages a first down yardage every catch at 10.4 yards per catch. So those are not bad stats at all. And Sammy Watkins, he's kind of forgotten sometime here, but Sammy Watkins with his speed is always a deep threat. I think he has about 38 receptions this year with 3 touchdowns, but each of his touchdowns were over 40 yards apiece. So this man can fly down the field, and he is somebody you need to pay attention to into this game. With the Bucs, Evans, Godwin, Gronk, and Brown. Antonio Brown, they give the Bucs a 4-headed monster. I mean, Gronk and AB, they're already pretty much, in my opinion, in the Hall of Fame. Evans and Godwin got some work to do, but Evans especially, if he keeps it up, he's on his way as well. Evans, you just throw the ball downfield to him, and he goes up and get it. Just like Sammy Watkins, Scotty Miller, the guy who caught that pass against the last week in the conference, 2 weeks ago in the conference championship against the Packers, he caught that pass at the end of the first half. This guy is a speed threat, and he is highly underrated. Highly underrated. The man actually in college was a track and field star more than he was a football player. He runs a sub 10.5 100-yard dash. So in this game especially, he is someone to keep an eye on, but I got a funny feeling Kansas City, after what happened 2 weeks ago in Green Bay, they know exactly who he is now. Next slide. Their running games, each team running game. Tampa uses a 1-2 punch with Jones and Fournette. Jones is the primary back, while Leonard is the bruiser and short yardage back. Now, I didn't put this on here, but Fournette and Jones have I think Fournette has 6 touchdowns to Jones 7. Fournette only has about 400 yards on the season, but those short down yardage, those 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 3s, or those 2nd and goals, 3rd and goals, that's where they bring Fournette in. So that's why you will keep hearing Fournette name, although Jones carries the primary load. Now, same thing with the Chiefs. Edwards-Helaire, he is their primary, and Bell is the bruiser. Bell is a shadow of his former self when he was in Pittsburgh. He no longer does the same thing, but he is still a good back, and I'm quite sure he can find the end zone. He always used to find it in Pittsburgh. He can still find the end zone, I think, as he has about 6 or 7 touchdowns as well. Sneaky stat here at the bottom. Patrick Mahomes is actually a better rusher than people give him credit for. He has 62 rushing attempts on his own and over 300 yards and 5 TDs. So that is something people need to pay attention to in this game. I mean, he does more than just run and run for his life. You know, they do call running plays for him, and sometimes when there's nothing in the passing game to throw, he will run it, and he's smart enough to get out of bounds and not take that big hit. Next slide. I said this earlier. There is a disturbing trend from Kansas City, from a gambling and pure football standpoint. Ever since they played the Bucs back on November 29th, look at these scores. Win by 3. Against the lowly Broncos, I think they might have just barely covered the spread here. So that was 22-16. Now the Dolphins were in the playoff battle with the Dolphins at the time, but still you would think Kansas City with this explosive offense, they would have just run through some of these teams. Now the Chiefs and the Saints, we kind of expected this score, but it still wasn't a runaway. This here was the beginning when I started noticing that, because I gamble on these games as well from time to time, The Chiefs were just not covering the spread. On top of that, the Falcons, I think they end up scoring late in the fourth quarter or something like that, to end up winning the game. Now, we're going to excuse this one here, the Chargers and the Chiefs. They lost that game, but that was the last game of the season. The Chiefs set Mahomes and pretty much their entire starting lineup. Same thing in the divisional round. Now, granted, Mahomes did get hurt in the third quarter. He had to come out with a concussion. But here's the catch, though. This was a close game anyway while he was in the game. Now, the conference championship, they finally got it together, the Chiefs. But again, this is a disturbing trend, and it looks like they were either A, playing down to the level of their competition, or B, more importantly, teams have started to slowly but surely figure this passing game out, but they haven't quite been able to stop it. Also, as I said earlier, remember I had pointed to the second half. They've been outplayed in the second half pretty much the entire second half of the season. And I don't care how good your passing game is, you need to have a running game in the NFL or any form of football. And their running game has been almost non-existent since that game against the Buccaneers. I think that game they rushed for like 35, 40 yards on like 25 carries altogether. And as you can see, again, it wasn't a blowout. It wasn't a blowout nor a shootout. So that's kind of some disturbing trends for Kansas City. Some things that I just noticed here and there. So, disturbing trend for the Bucs. Interceptions. Tom Brady threw 3 against a very good defense last week. I keep saying last week, so excuse me. 2 weeks ago against the Packers. Now, this Bucs squad is much better than the Packers on defense. Much, much better. So be wary of this. Tom Brady does not throw the ball deep well. He never has, even when he was in New England. And 2 of those 3 interceptions came over the 25-yard passing mark that Tom Brady was trying to throw. So he threw 3 interceptions last week. So be careful of that. How each team defeats the other. So these are the keys to victory or game within a game, whatever you want to call it. So how each team defeats the other. For the Bucs, establish your running game. And the reason why I say that is because of this right here. Keep that high-powered Chiefs offense off the field. I didn't put it on here, but sneaky stat. The Chiefs are not one of the top, time of possession teams in the NFL because when they score extremely fast. 40 yards, 60 yards. Even in some of their drives, they're like 80, 90-yard drives. There's always a big-time play in there of 30 yards or more. Also, for the Bucs, be willing to settle for the dink and dunk. You don't need any big plays. And that kind of alludes to back what I just said about Tom Brady and those 3 interceptions. He does not throw the ball downfield very well. Even in his prime, he never did. But if you make him dink and dunk you, you're playing right into his ball game. We all know he'll throw those 5-yard slants all day. The Bucs, blitz, and more blitzes on defense. You need to hit Mahomes. You cannot just step back there and let him pick you off. You just can't. You can't. If you don't blitz this guy and hit him a few times, probably try to knock him out the game, what have you, it's going to be a long day because as you can see against the Bills' top-rated defense, he pretty much shredded them apart for about 380 yards. And lastly, I kind of mentioned this early, Scotty Miller. I think the Chiefs know who he is now. I've been known who he was from a fantasy football standpoint. Scotty Miller is a wild card. Use him. This guy can fly down the field, or at worst case scenario, he can take a 6-yard gain and he can turn it into 60. So don't forget Scotty Miller is out there. The Chiefs. There's not a lot that they really need to do other than what they've been doing, but here's one of them. Force Brady to beat you deep. Now, I've alluded to this twice. Now, that kind of sounds crazy because, again, I said they had a 4-headed monster. So these guys can go up and get the ball, especially Evans and Brown. They can go get it, but Brady is not comfortable, in my opinion, throwing the ball more than about 8 or 9 yards. Anything 13, 14 yards or more, Brady accuracy goes down a lot. For the Chiefs, you need to establish some form of a running game. Your running game has been non-existent for the last 6 weeks. If you don't have a running game, you're going to let Tampa Bay's top-rated defense just tear off on you. You have to establish a running game. This one is the one I've noticed big with the Chiefs. Complacency. It's almost like they've gotten the Super Bowl. They just kind of walking onto the field and thinking they've won the game before it has started. In no sport can you do that. That's where Andy Reid is going to need to step in at and make them realize that these other teams that you're playing against, especially today, that being the championship game, they're coming to bring it. They are not just going to turn over because you're the Kansas City Chiefs. You cannot be complacent against the Bucs today because guess what? Not only do they want to win, they're playing in their home stadium. So look at the huge celebration that they're going to get. So avoid the complacency, Kansas City. Let's get into gambling as always. I get my numbers from Rivers Casino. So gambling, this line has been pretty consistent since it came out. I think at one point it went to like 3.5, but there's been very little line movement. So for those that are gambling, if you're taking the Chiefs are at +3. So that if you're taking the Chiefs, they need to win by 4 points, not 3. Because if they win by 3, that is a push, a fancy word for a tie. The Bucs are at -3. So if you're taking the Bucs, if they win, it doesn't matter. But if they lose, they need to lose by 3 or more. So if they lose by 2, you still win your money. If they lose by 3, that's a push. 4 or more, you lose your money. The money lines. Chiefs, -157. So you need to put $157 just to win 100 if you're taking the Chiefs. The Bucs are at +138. So you put up 100. Bucs win, you win your 100 black plus $138 extra dollars for a total payout of $138. This one here is kind of ugh. This over-under of 56. I think that is a really slightly too high, but I can understand why some would take that. And I'll try to explain that in a second. But the over-under is at 56 points. So basically, if it's 56 points even, which I got a funny feeling it's going to be, it's a push. Like I've always said, these guys who do these numbers are extremely smart. I don't know how they do it, but they do it very well. My goofy prop bet of the week. The first TD will be a QB sneak. We all know that Tom Brady always have a QB sneak at some point in these playoffs. And as I said earlier, Patrick Mahomes is a pretty decent running quarterback. With so much passing going on in this game, expect a pick 6. That one right there, I really think more than the QB sneak. If you was on to pick one or the other, I would take a pick 6 thrown by either quarterback. So these are my goofy ass prop bets of the week. Here are my predictions. Tampa Bay has the much better defense and it will keep them in the game. The Kansas City's defense is only 16th in the league. They will give up some points and some yardage. As good as the Chiefs receiving core is, the Bucs are actually better. I just kind of went over the four-headed monster of Gronk, Godwin, AB, and Evans. And Evans is a stud. Evans, I think at one point, I think Kelsey finished the league with touchdowns, but Evans is right up there. I said this earlier. Tampa is playing in their home stadium for the first time in this postseason, and they are also the first team ever to play a Super Bowl in their home stadium. Kansas City will be just as efficient in the passing game as they always are. You can't stop their passing game. You can only hope to slow them down. And again, Kansas City, the second half struggles, complacency, and lack of a consistent running game the last few weeks will come back to bite them, which is why I have my final score as Kansas City 25, the Bucs 31. Yep, Tom Brady, I think we'll get this Super Bowl. I'm sorry that my final score is not down here, I don't think, but I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning this one. I have it being right at the over-under of 56. I think for the most part, the Chiefs are going to go for a 2-point conversion and get it at some point in this game. But yes, I have Tampa Bay winning Super Bowl 55, 31-25 on their home field. Yep, that is it. So as always, thank you for tuning in. And thank you for watching all my videos. This is my first year getting into this type of thing where I'm doing sports videos, politics, what have you. So thank you for everybody who's watched my videos, who shared them. And as always, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for tuning in to Riley's Talk. Enjoy the game, and you all have a great day.